Hello, Andrew. How are you?
I'm great. Good to see you, Rebecca.
Good to see you as well. I'm loving the new office space. It looks great.
Yes, we are super excited. We've only been moved in for about a week, and we still have boxes everywhere. And but after going through what everybody's been through this summer and in the fall, just getting to come to a brand new office, I kind of have like shiny new shoe syndrome. Like I don't want to mess it up. Everything's so nice and clean and perfect right now that I'm almost afraid to use some of the stuff. But hey, we're here and we're glad to be back and being able to collaborate a little bit.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I think that's a great fresh start and something good for morale. So
Yeah,
congratulations. That's
thank
awesome.
you. No, it's great. Having a little elbow room.
Yeah, I love it. I'm so excited to have you on the show today. For those of you that don't know Andrew, we have a long-standing friendship and have just had a bunch of really cool different ways that we have interacted throughout our careers. I actually met my first job straight out of college.
Yeah.
I started out as a project manager in IT, and one of your mentors was my boss.
Yes.
And we just instantly hit it off and became really great friends. And through the course of both of our careers, have really stayed close to both healthcare and software. So that leads me to what Andrew's doing now. He is the CEO of a company called FortyAU. They are only my favorite software development shop in the US, and where I've sent a lot of really neat mobile projects, web development projects, and enterprise software technology platforms that they've built as well. So Andrew, with you being on the show today, I really want to focus our conversation around software development, and would love with you to just start basically talking us through how you approach software development and what really makes FortyAU different.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thank you again, and just awesome opportunity to reconnect. And like you said, we go way back, so this is fun to be able to kind of circle back at different points in our career and touch base. So yeah, you're hitting on a topic that I'm obviously very passionate about. But we've started FortyAU kind of with the thesis. My two partners that started it were software developers, and you know both of them well. And when we got started, their whole philosophy was, this idea of blending consulting with software development. And that may not seem revolutionary, but we think of consultants as problem solvers, as people that understand business and context. And our theory was that essentially, if you could put software developers right at the table with CEOs and CTOs and business people and let the business problems come out, that developers were really going to be positioned better to kind of take that information and do their jobs better. I think unfortunately, the reality in a lot of companies is that software developers are the engines that make a lot of these great companies go, but they're sort of also treated as second-class citizens. They're kind of put in the back room and told, well, you're kind of nerdy and you're kind of technical, so you're not allowed to talk to business people.
You guys do have a really strong design practice, though.
We do.
And your products look beautiful. Tell me about what that looks like and how you guys have really focused on building that out.
Yeah, so I always tell people, making software is a tough business, and engineering and pure engineering talent is sort of where we started. But there's a lot of other things that go into making a great software product. And so at the beginning of that life cycle, you have to start with design. And we had in our early years, we had a number of former designers who became developers, and so we kind of farmed that work to them. But as we've grown, we've had to grow in that discipline because, for me, what great design does is really clarifies the vision of a client. We can sit here and talk about a product, and as entrepreneurs, we can get excited and get passionate, but we can't, a lot of times we're not clear, And so the ability to create clarity in a visual way and say, oh, okay, we were talking about this dashboard or this data set. What does it need to look like to you to be actionable? You can only do that if you start to visualize it. And so that really for us drives clarity, which then makes the development process go much smoother the more time we can spend in that phase. But I also think too that, we're probably a little bit different, that we don't try and overdo the design. We don't try and get every micro interaction. We don't try and get everything perfect. We want to get a good format and a framework for it and understand the product and the big direction, sort of where we're going. But I think you can overdo design as well. And you can spend 6, 8, 12 weeks iterating and iterating. And at some point you have to be able to say, okay, we know enough to get started.
How do you get folks to actually internalize that? And when they're maybe in a stressful situation, say stop and basically take that step back. Do you guys have a practice around that?
You get put in this pressure, and a lot of people say when you're in the services business, well, customers have to come first. And we would slightly disagree with that. We love our customers, we value them, but if you don't keep healthy teams internally, if you don't have healthy employees and healthy teams, then they can't serve customers well. So we've always, tried to take the approach because we learned it early on that if you burn out a teammate, forcing them to a deadline that's unrealistic, well, guess what? They're going to resent you and they're not going to stay with you 2 or 3 or 4 years. They're going to go find another job because developers are in such high demand. So if we're going to be a place that's about developers, give them a realistic workload, back them up if something isn't, if a client's, mistreating them, or if it's just not a realistic issue they can solve, back them up and be realistic. Because I'd much rather lose a client, than lose a developer who could have been a great contributor on our teams and was doing their job in a good fashion. So, those kind of things, I think for us really sort of just get embedded in the culture over time, to where taking care of each other, is the number one tenet I tell our people. I said, we don't have a lot of hard and fast rules in our employee handbook, but if a teammate reaches out, you help them. If you've got that expertise and somebody puts a message on Slack, your job is to jump in and help them, because you're going to need that help at some point too. If we can create a culture where developers with this diverse expertise are always helping each other and always picking their teammates up, we should be fine, at the end of the day.
Let's talk about the crazy world of COVID-19, because we were talking about some of the cool projects that came out of that for your company and specifically how your customers reacted to that. Can you walk us through a little bit of the impact you guys were able to make as folks were really pivoting and reprioritizing digital initiatives and looking to make an impact, especially in healthcare?
Yeah, no, it's been as everybody has said, it's been a strange year, but, on our side of the house, like everybody else, when the end of March rolled around here, we had a lot of plans made and we had initiatives underway. One of the things about FortyAU is that we're kind of industry agnostic. And so we work with healthcare and finance, and we work with the restaurant and hospitality industries and all those. So we felt some immediate impacts. We had some clients that, restaurants and other businesses that were immediately hurting. And so we saw some drop off, but right behind that, you had a lot of business leaders that adapted and reacted and said, okay, well, if my restaurant shut down, I really need to up my e-commerce presence, is a simple example, right? We have a customer that's in the funeral services industry that all of a sudden you couldn't have a funeral. And imagine that you have a loved one that passes away across the country and you have no way to say goodbye. So then how could they do a virtual receiving line? And, and certainly a lot in the healthcare space, companies that had telemedicine on their agenda, but it was like, 5th or 10th on their priority list. And all of a sudden overnight, it becomes their number one initiative. So we saw a surge in business of companies going, hey, I need help and I need it now. And I don't honestly know what to do. And so I was really proud of our company. And I think, in that month of April, we had the lowest amount of vacation and time off I'd ever seen in our company, because people really rallied behind that. We had big healthcare companies coming to us and saying, look, we need to understand at the moment where our patient discharges are and how many beds are available, because we're worried about bed capacity. And this is, again, think about the early days where, nobody knew how bad this thing was going to get. And so we were working over the weekend, and we had people doing shifts, working 48 hours to make that data available so they could make better decisions.
You use a word to describe you guys as nimble too. You're nimble enough that you can pivot and react to that. And I think that's why a lot of your customers love working with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we've always taken the philosophy that, development's development. And so you'll never see us put a badge up that says we're a so-and-so type of shop, or we're a, we want to be able to say, look, development's development. And if it's a software problem, we ought to be able to help you, and that's not, that doesn't come from a place of arrogance or overconfidence. It comes from, that's the nature of the world we live in these days. And I don't care if you're an older legacy tech stack or you want to do something new and innovative. We want to do that all. We want to help you with any of it, and that's what I think, that versatility. It's not just about being a dev and being versatile in what tech stacks you can touch, but can you go to a legacy project and debug it? Can you build something from scratch? Can you take, a product and migrate it and kind of reimagine it? And all those things are different challenges if you're really, want to hone that craft. So.
You said a word that is a trigger word for, I think, both you and I, and that was arrogance. So that leads me to wanting to talk about your book, which is about humility. The Humility Imperative. Amazing book. I've read it twice. I love it. It speaks a lot to who you are and how you do business. Will you tell us about the vision for that and really how it came to life?
Yeah, it's so thank you. It's something I've been really passionate about for a number of years. The book came out originally in the summer of 2017, And it was a topic I had sort of taken on this personal challenge of I was trying to take a topic every year and create a class around it. And usually, honestly, it was something that I felt like either needed to be explored or frankly that I needed to work on. And so it was like one of those things where I got in and I started reading a little bit about how humility may be misinterpreted. And I think the biggest misunderstanding when it comes to humility that you have to sort of, when you're going to talk about this topic, is you have to get people to understand that humility is not equated with weakness. And that is the misnomer. That is the, if you're in a leadership role particularly, people don't a lot of times want to hear about humility because they associate it with submissiveness or weakness. And so I got sort of onto this idea of how do we reframe that, in the modern context to say humility is not weakness at all. You can be both very confident and very humble at the same time. And actually the best leaders balance those two really well.
Well, Andrew, can we see the book and
Sure.
get a good
Yeah.
visual there? There
So
we go.
here
Awesome.
it is. As all books, it's available on Amazon. So if you, and again, I hope it's something that people enjoy and get a lot out of, but the humility imperative, why the humble leader wins in an age of ego.
That's good.
So hopefully it's a quick read. So
yeah, no, it is. I devoured it on a flight from Nashville to San Francisco a few years ago.
Right.
So we'll make sure we share links so you guys know where to find Andrew and be able to check that out as well. So I want to talk about another passion you have too, which is a really neat organization in Nashville called Blade Runners.
Amputee Blade Runners is it's an organization that I was one of the original board members. A friend of mine named Aaron Fitzsimmons started it. He's a proselytist who builds these legs for active amputees and amputee athletes from all over the country. And Aaron has a huge servant's heart and a passion for the prosthetics industry is not known for being the most consumer friendly, let's just say. A lot of people get disillusioned. They don't get the care they need. And so therefore they end up limiting themselves, thinking they can't do things. And so, Aaron really had a passion around let's create something where we can give this gift of mobility and freedom back to folks who had suffered a trauma, because we always say there's no easy amputation stories. It always is a horrendous trauma, whether it's a birth defect or somebody gets run over by a lawnmower or a car accident or wherever it is traumatic. And the fact that you're able, because this technology is so good now, that the blades that you've seen, in TV commercials and Paralympic athletes running with really can make them as effective as they were before from a mobility perspective. And so it's a new technology that kind of not a lot of people had experience with. And it's like anything when the industry, an active amputee is a rarity, honestly, because most of the amputees in this country are older or diabetic, COPD related, smoking, those kind of things. So a young person who loses a leg doesn't really have a lot of resources. And so we started this charity where we bring people in from all over the country. They apply, they show us that they're passionate about getting active, and they come in from all over the country. We fit them in 2 to 3 days. We show them how to make their own prosthetics and really how to care for themselves as they go back home. And it's just been an awesome charity. I mean, when you give somebody back the gift of running or mobility or sports, you can see it. I mean, we particularly work with a lot of kids. We've had high school cheerleaders who come in and say, hey, I never was able to jump before.
Well, I want to talk a little bit now about principles. I'm sure humility is in there, but is there a guiding principle that you would say has been your go-to as you've been successful throughout business that's really guided that success and that you've clung to really make an impact overall?
So much of our lives comes down to trying to make ourselves look good, trying to succeed, trying to get ours, to make whatever money to justify ourselves and whoever's eyes we're trying to please. And really your life expands when you start to look at other people and value them as much as you do yourself, and to be able to serve and to be able to provide value. I use this word value a lot. Am I providing value to other people? Am I speaking value and pouring value into somebody else's life? If I'm working with a nonprofit organization, and so you really, it's the big misnomer that we all struggle with, is that, if I have to justify myself and it's all about my own narcissistic needs, then yeah, I can be super successful by what the world judges. But, at the end of the day, you're also going to feel empty. And so it's one of those where I think you have to constantly fight against, it's not about you, or it's not all about you, at least, And so I think that's always sort of what's been, guided me. And I think from the perspective of humility, that's that kind of core touchstone you can come back to and say, on the one hand, nobody's any better than you, but also you're not better than anybody else either, and so it's one of those, if you can kind of live with that paradox and sort of lead from that space, the trappings of leadership are dangerous, and this, and again, the trappings of success are dangerous. And so you have to be vigilant and sort of, I heard somebody say this week, we have to stay uncomfortable, stay uncomfortable, when you kind of have that success, or, and they say a lot of successful people are paranoid. I don't advise paranoia, but staying uncomfortable and not being sort of letting it sink in that, oh, well, I'm patting myself on the back too much, or that look what I did and look at all this that I deserve. Those are all dangerous thoughts, and but yet they creep in all the time. So I think that's where I would come back to.
Have you put guardrails in place in your life to make sure when you're going off track about these things and maybe not providing as much value or not as humble as you could be, that can help you course correct?
I think the biggest thing I've seen to that effect, Rebecca, is when I get comfortable, when I get too comfortable, and not to just kind of choose that phrase, but if you get to a point where again, I feel like I've got this business or this job or whatever it is down, then that's when you become a little bit, you're not quite as helpful as you were before. You don't follow up quite as much. You don't want to answer that question again because you've been asked it 50 times. And that position is a difficult one to find yourself in sometimes, and to look back on my career and be like, oh, I was really being a jerk at that point because everybody's coming to me and, whatever it was. So it's that challenge to push yourself out of that comfort zone when you get there, because a lot of people go, oh, well, look, I made it. I'm comfortable now. I'm in this like safe rut, this area of stagnation. People don't look at it as stagnation. They look at it as comfort, and they go, look, why shouldn't I just stay here? And I go, well, because your life won't expand anymore if you do, but that's a really hard thing to challenge yourself to do. I kind of tend to think that, people are placed in your life to push you out of that comfort zone sometimes. So a lot of successful folks will tell you to say no to everything. I try and say yes to everything that I can, and that's sort of counterintuitive because everybody wants to talk about burning yourself out and self-care and all that stuff this day. I say, look, I was put here with a lot of energy and I want to bring it and I want to use it up. And so if you need help with something, or if there's something I can do to add value, well then, gosh, I want to do it, because I don't know where this path will lead. And so that's maybe a little bit counterintuitive, but that's what I try and do, is say yes to things, even if they're not perfectly fitting in my schedule or whatever, because that's where you get challenged sometimes and you get a new perspective.
That's good. And I think if you have the approach to life as a learner, there is never a making it.
Right.
Or else then what is the point to keep going? You're at a dead end, and it's definitely a dangerous place to be.
Success to me is, like you said, being able to reinvent and change yourself and keep the scenery changing. It's a couple years ago, I'd written the book, and so I never thought of myself as an author. So I kind of got to be an author for that year. And then it was my brother who said, hey, will you marry us? I'm getting married next year. Will you marry us? And I said, well, I never thought of myself as a priest, right? So I had to go and learn how to do that. And then I was able to teach a college class, and I never thought of myself as a professor, so I could have said no to any and all of those. Nobody would fault you, but it's like, how can you kind of keep reinventing and challenging yourself in those different ways? And that's what keeps it interesting, keeps it fun.
Oh, I'm totally with you. Not everybody has that approach, but not everybody runs my favorite software development company. So I think it served you very well.
Are you still playing music?
Absolutely.
Right.
I'll never stop. That's the way I consistently make sure I'm being a learner and challenging myself. Yeah. So let that creative outlet out. So yeah. Andrew, this was so much fun. Absolutely. I so appreciate you being a part of the show, and love seeing your new space, hearing of your success through these crazy times. And I just continue to wish you guys all the best as you have your focus, I believe, on the right things. And it's going to be what leads to a long-term company that really stands the test of time and makes a big impact in the industry overall.
Well, thank you. You know that we're a big fan of yours, and I love that you've got this new platform to kind of share stories with, and I appreciate you letting us share ours a little bit, because it's you've been a big part of it, and we thank you for all the help, and certainly want to stay in touch. So,
well, thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate that, and I will see you in Nashville very, very soon.
That's great. Come check out the new place.
I'll be there soon for sure.
Thanks, Rebecca.